Hey guys, it's ETA Prime back here again. Today we're going to be taking a look at a $20 handheld console from Wish.com. Now if you ask me, this definitely looks more like a PS Vita than a Nintendo Switch, but they definitely wanted to get that color scheme in there just to give it that Switch-esque look. So yeah, I'm definitely not expecting much from this handheld. And by the way, in the listing, it was listed as an X7 with a 5.1 inch screen, but I was sent over a smaller version called the X1. Believe it or not, this is the first item I've ever purchased and received from Wish.com. I've actually made 3 other purchases in the past, but nothing ever showed up. So they did claim that this can do SNES, NES, Mega Drive, CPS-1, CPS-2, Neo Geo, some arcade games, and Game Boy Advance. So inside of the box I got the console, a user manual, a plethora of cords here, and it looks like this is using mini USB, not even micro USB. This is the old school mini. Some cheap headphones. We got a composite video to 3.5mm jack. So this does support video and audio out, but I'm sure it's really horrible quality. And we get our mini USB wall charger. 1 amp, 5 volts. So it's about the same size as the PS Vita. It has dual analog sticks. Now I can't tell you yet if both of these analog sticks are functional, but we'll get to that in just a second. Before I really even get into here, I'm going to see if this thing even works. We'll turn it on. Now I did charge it up for about 30 minutes. It's really nice to see that screen come on, and this looks to be about a 4.3 inch screen, even though it was advertised as a 5.1 inch. As expected, build quality on this unit feels pretty bad. The screen looks absolutely horrible. Don't expect to get some HD resolution screen or an IPS display here. Truth be told, looking at it straight on, it's really not that bad. It's super low resolution, and that's fine for these retro games we're about to test out, but the viewing angles are really bad. So on the bottom of the unit, we have our mini USB, TV out, audio out, both are 3.5mm jacks, reset button, and our SD card slot. On the top of the unit, we have our volume up and down, a pinhole microphone, power switch, a power button, and our L and R buttons. And on the face, we have our D-pad, dual analog sticks, an escape button, start, select, A, B, X, Y. So we definitely have enough buttons to play the games that are advertised this thing can play. But the real question here is, how does it perform? So the first thing I noticed here is the right analog stick isn't mapped as an analog stick. It's mapped as your A and B button. So we can go in here and press up or down and it'll start whatever we're highlighted on, just like pressing A or B to exit. And yes, it does have an MP4 player built in. And as far as I can tell, there's no way to remap these buttons, so you'll be stuck with a bogus analog stick on the right hand side. The whole menu setup isn't as bad as I've seen, but there's not a lot in here that I'm going to use except for the games. There is a video player, music player. We also have settings here. And by the way, this has a single speaker setup. So from the display settings, we have our brightness level, contrast, saturation. We also have a music and a photo setting in here. And it looks like music setting, background. Background music? I'm not hearing anything at all. I don't think it really has background music. So we'll move down a little bit here. To photo, auto time 5 seconds, switch mode, default, movie, explorer, we'll go to system, and there's really not that much in here. Under system information, it will give you the free space on the SD card and the software version. So this whole operating system or firmware is running from an internal SD card, but all the games are stored on an external where the SD card slot is on the bottom. There's a few games listed up here with some box art, but most of the stuff will be launched from the games folder, and you won't get any box art at all. Let's see how it performs. First up, we'll test out the Punisher, and this is running in some kind of FBA emulator. So right off the bat, the first thing I'm noticing here is the sound delay. It's off by quite a bit. It's definitely noticeable. And there's absolutely no way to fix this with the firmware it's running right now. And I don't think anybody's going to be making custom firmware for this cheap handheld. Now, as for the video emulation, it's actually handling the Punisher much better than I thought it would. But this sound delay is really bad and it makes me not even want to play it. Alright, so this is pretty bad. Let's move over to a different emulator. We'll go with Game Boy Advance. Sonic Advance 3 was already preloaded, got lots of frame skip going on. I mean, it definitely looks really choppy here. Got a little sound delay going on, but it's not as bad as it was with FBA. And they've definitely added some frame skip here to make it look like it's running at full speed, but this really ruins the whole experience. For me, GBA is a no-go here, so let's move on to something a little easier to emulate, and that's going to be Genesis/Mega Drive. So I thought that the sound delay in the Final Burn Alpha emulator was bad, but this is dookie. I'd rather be using the old At Games Genesis handheld than this thing. It can't possibly be as bad for SNES emulation. And while it's not, something isn't right here. It just feels like it's definitely not running at full speed. I've tested this game a lot. It's actually one of my favorite Super Nintendo games. And something is just off with this one. I also thought about testing some Super Nintendo games that utilize the FX chip, like Star Fox or the FX chip 2 for Yoshi's Island, but I'm 100% positive it's not going to run them at full speed. And finally, I figured I'd go ahead and throw a Neo Geo game at it, but then I thought, hey, it's using the same emulator as the first FBA game we tested, so we're going to have that sound delay, and yes, we have that delay here also. So basically, it's junk. I knew it was going to be junk. I mean, I got it on Wish.com for 20 bucks, and you get what you pay for, but I still want to take this thing apart and see what CPU they're running in this thing. I just pulled the back off. It's 4 screws, really easy to get apart. Got a 1500 mAh LiPo battery. The firmware and the OS is running from an internal SD card. We have a little microphone up here and the built-in camera. I did test the camera and I'm not even going to show it off. I mean, it's bad. It's like a 0.3 megapixel. It is a 4.3 inch LCD display. I'm going to go ahead and pull this ribbon cable out. Not seeing a huge CPU in here like the MIP CPU used in some of these Chinese handheld consoles that have been recently released. But I do see something that looks very familiar. Unfortunately, it's not marked the same. I have a good feeling about what this CPU is. Some of these companies do rebrand these CPUs. And running the name or number online brings up absolutely nothing. But I have seen this same looking chip inside of another handheld console that was released in early 2019, known as the new BitBoy. I'm pretty sure it's running the same chip here, just rebranded. It's an all-winner F1C 500S, single-core ARM9 26ELS CPU, up to 300 MHz, and it's using DDR1 RAM. Now this chip actually performs really well with NES, Game Boy, and Game Boy Color, but anything above that really struggles on this tiny chip. As they say, you get what you pay for. 20 bucks on Wish.com doesn't get you much, and I knew this wasn't going to be a good performer, but I didn't pay for the X1, I actually paid for the X7, which I was really hoping to get. Instead, I was sent the smaller version, but to tell you the truth, the X7 probably performs just like this thing. So that's it for this video, guys. I really appreciate you watching. If you want to see this thing get smashed or blown up, just let me know in the comments below. But like always, thanks for watching.